Anybody right now and yesterday, anybody that needs a test gets a test. They're there. They have the test.
The president has said that anybody who wants a test can get a test. Is that consistent with what you heard in there?
No, it's not consistent right now. That's obviously the goal, is to be able to get testing for everybody who wants testing, to be able to get it, and to be able to get it in multiple locations. But that's not accurate right now.
I mean, should you stop saying that?
Yeah, people should not say if you want a test, you go get a test right now.
A Republican senator would like the president to stop lying about a national crisis. The top expert on diseases, meanwhile, is calling the government's response by its proper name.
The system is not really geared to what we need right now, what you are asking for. That is a failing.
And failing, yes.
It is a failing. I mean, let's admit it. The idea of anybody getting it easily, the way people in other countries are doing it, we're not set up for that. Do I think we should be? Yes. But we're not.
Dr. Anthony Fauci will be our guest this morning on Morning Joe. Good morning and welcome to Morning Joe. It is Friday, March 13th, and what a week it's been, wow. Joe. The past 24 hours has put the United States of America in a very different place.
A very different place. There have been a lot of cancellations, a lot of sports cancellations, and yeah, it's very disconcerting.
Local states of emergency
for a lot of Americans. The local states of emergency that's in place. I do want to touch on a few things, though. It's a terrible day on Wall Street, but I'm starting to see recognition in areas that there hasn't been recognition in the past, and that's a really good thing. Willie, we saw a senator say, no, you can't get tests right now if you need them. That's important that the truth start being told like that. Dr. Fauci said the same thing yesterday, said it was a failing. Last night, Sean Hannity asked Secretary Azar, when can every American get a test if they want a test? Secretary Azar refused to answer the question.
But it's being asked.
But it's being asked. Martha McCallum, earlier in the evening on Fox News, had asked the question, what about ventilators? We have a shortage of ventilators. How are we going to fix that? And the person that was her guest just spouted off Trump talking points saying, well, this is why Donald Trump's doing such a great job. No, that was the talk from last week. It seems that there is an understanding, there is a seriousness, that this pandemic is serious, that senior citizens are endangered, that millions of lives are endangered. And if we get ahead of it, if we do better than we've done over the past month, we don't have to look like Italy. I saw that yesterday, Willie, actually in a very depressing day on many fronts, but I saw that as a silver lining.
Without question, society, states, local governments, schools are taking this as seriously as possible and as serious as is necessary right now. And we've talked about this for a week now, that we have to sadly look past the President of the United States, who in many ways has his own interest in mind. We saw that when he misstated 3 different things during his primetime address. He didn't talk about testing. We have new reporting that I know Mika's going to get into a second, that he wanted to slow down the testing a little bit or not introduce new testing because he worried that those big new numbers of cases might hurt his chances at re-election. The country is doing the right thing in spite of its president right now.
Yeah, and I got to say, Mika, that's another thing. Sean Hannity, of course, he said a lot of things last night. Most things that he said last night, I disagreed on. He was bashing the media pretty much nonstop. But obviously, it's a free country. But he also talked about how this pandemic was serious and said it was legitimate that people were concerned that testing had not gotten out there yet. I mean, see, this is what, in a pandemic, the one thing the president said the other night I really agreed on was, we're all in this together. And I hope the president of the United States starts acting more like we're all in this together. But if we can at least have the same set of facts to start from, which is we are in the middle of a global pandemic. This is frightening. This is a real danger to our senior citizens and our grandmothers, our grandfathers, our mothers, our fathers, which certainly sounded like that last night on Fox News. There was no talking anymore, as there had been on some shows, about hoaxes and media hoaxes. But if we can have a debate on how to best do that,
right?
Is it bans coming in and out of this country? Is it this? Is it that? Blah, blah, blah. I mean, as long as we're debating the same facts and everybody is just interested in one thing, and that is beating this pandemic,
Yeah.
well, that's a good step forward for us as a country.
And the prevailing question that really stands to be the number one question for the entire country right now is, how is it possible? How is it possible that in some cases desperate people cannot get tests?
Well, they still can't. I have, Willie, we've got a good friend, and he was exposed to the coronavirus and tried desperately to get testing, couldn't do it. So they just sent him home, and he's counting the days. He's got to be locked, in lockdown for the next 4 days, separated from his family, because they don't have a test to tell him whether he's positive or not. So he's going to be off of work for about 4 or 5 days, and people who work for him are not going to be getting a paycheck. I mean, this is being repeated across the country. In Ohio, reports that they only have 1,500
Good God.
in the entire state of Ohio. In California, Gavin Newsom said, you basically sent me out copiers without ink. Yes, you gave me test kits, but you don't have the chemicals to actually make the test kits worth a damn. Look, this is why we really need somebody. And Azar, if it's not Azar, he needs to quit. He needs to go home. He needs to play tiddlywinks or wiffle ball or whatever Azar does when he's at home. And we need to get somebody in there who will answer these questions. When are we going to get the testing kits? When will elderly Americans be able to go in and get a test when they want a test to know if they're safe or not?
Yeah, and what Dr.
All right.
Fauci said yesterday, and we'll ask him again shortly here on this show, is we're not set up for this. And the question is, why is the wealthiest country on the face of the earth not set up for this? And you're right, that's the protocol people are getting in New York and in cities across the country. Don't come into an ER. Don't go look for a test, because we just don't have them. Go home, isolate yourself, drink a lot of fluids, take an ibuprofen, treat it like you've got the flu, and just stay away from other people. That's the best we can do right now.
And of course, Miki, yesterday there were reports that early on the president didn't want the testing process to go forward because he didn't want to get the positives, because he knew that if the numbers went up, it was going to be bad for his re-election campaign. I trust that we are well beyond that. I trust that we are beyond that. But if we are beyond that, we need a federal official that works for Donald Trump's administration to step forward and give us a timeline. When are we going to get the tests? How quickly will our mothers and fathers, grandmothers and grandfathers get the tests? When can our children who may be testing positive for the coronavirus, when can they know whether they are or not, so we don't have to self-quarantine them and keep them away from their parents and grandparents? It's a lot of questions.
It's a legitimate question. Let's get.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.